What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first summer edition of Morning Cup of Hockey presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet on Betway. Please play responsibly. And remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. That's Colby Cohen. I'm Jonny Lazarus. You may have seen Colby crushing it yesterday on the Daily Faceoff Free Agency Special. You guys did an awesome job. 3 straight hours of talking. I'm sure people were tired of hearing your voice after 3 hours, but honestly, I watched it back again last night just to catch up once again on what a crazy day it was in the NHL. Over $1 billion in contracts handed out for the first time ever on July 1st. And we have a lot of contracts, a lot of different teams, a lot of different players to talk about. But Colby, let's just get your take right away. How was yesterday? Because you were in the mix basically the entire day talking about everything going on as it was happening with Frank, with Carter, with Tyler, and Larkin and Alberga as well, with some other guests coming in and out. But what was your takeaway from yesterday?
Well, look, I think that anytime you look at Frank's top 75 free agents, you never expect all 3 of them to end up in the exact same place. And that's what happened. I mean, you had Steven Stamkos, Marchessault, and Brady Shea all end up with the Nashville Predators. And, you know, you think about the personality of Barry Trotz and you think about how he's run his teams as a head coach. It just didn't seem like that was something that he was going to go do, hand out a bunch of massive contracts on, July 1, contracts that, look, we all know how July 1 works. We get very excited. And then sometimes within 18 to 24 months, the knives are out. The buyout talk is out. You know, we're talking about regretful days. Now, look, I happen to be a fan of all 3 players that signed in Nashville. And do I think, $8 million a year for Steven Stamkos was a little bit rich for the next 4 years? Yeah, I do think that was a little bit rich. But listen, that's the name of the game. That's why Mitch Marner probably wants to get to free agency, because you get more money.
The guy had 40 goals, though.
No, I understand that, but how often do you see them hand that out to a 35-year-old player? That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not taking away his season whatsoever. I got to tell you, I think I rarely question what Julien Brisebois is doing. I really rarely question it. I think he's kind of earned the right to not be questioned as of late. But if you think back, Jonny, to this show, and we talked about this around the trade deadline, we can get the receipts where I said, you need to trade Steven Stamkos, because if there's any chance you're going to lose him for nothing, you do not have a lot of assets. You do not have a lot of draft capital. You're going to have to rebuild eventually. Mm-hmm. You can't afford to let this guy walk for nothing. Forget the whole captain thing and 16 years. Like, forget all that.
Yeah, but are you now
a massive asset after losing in the first round again in the playoffs?
But you're not going to take in Jake Guentzel as like the.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let's just look at the numbers thing for a second here. And look, I don't know the answer to this question, and I'll say this. I'm not as big of a Jake Guentzel guy as the rest of the world is. I'm not. It's not that I don't think he's a good player. I think that I don't think he's never seemed to me to be a guy who creates on his own. He's a goal scorer who gets to the right spots, and there's a lot of value for that. And you could say that about Steven Stamkos, but I think Stamkos does more, in 200 feet of ice. So, and I know I'm kind of in the minority who thinks that, by the way. I think that, most people look at Jake Guentzel as like a premier player in the NHL. Like, I don't necessarily.
Well, no, I think you're right in the sense that he's a premier goal scorer, not a premier player.
But isn't Steven Stamkos also a premier goal scorer? And I'm wondering, is $9 million over like that might be too much money for Jake Guentzel. So let me just ask you my question.
Yeah.
Okay. The Lightning in 2024, 2025 will have Jake Guentzel and Ryan McDonagh costing $15.75 million. I wrote this down yesterday because I thought it was interesting. Or they could have had Stam. Or they could have had Stam. Did you lose me?
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Go ahead.
Jeremiah actually just texted this to me. Frank just tweeted that Victor Hedman just signed an extension for 4 years, $8 million per year.
Okay, so there you go. A little breaking news. He's, they were talking about that yesterday.
Thank you, Jeremiah, by the way.
And they probably had to do that because I got to tell you, like, those guys are probably very unhappy right now. But hold on. So let me finish. 24-25. You've got 15. You have 15.75 million into Stamkos and Sergachev. Stamkos and McDonough. Oh my God. I can't believe how I can't fucking read right now.
It's okay.
Guentzel and McDonough are costing you 15.75. Or you would have had Stamkos and Sergachev for 16.5. So $750,000 more.
Well, Hedman just got the exact same deal that Stamkos got.
But let's just take that off the table right now. We're just talking about the 2 players in versus 2 players out, right? It's Stamkos and Sergachev out, McDonough and Guentzel in. Are you a better team using, let's just say $16 million, because we're literally talking about $700,000, the delta. Are you better with Guentzel and McDonough, or are you better with Stamkos and Sergachev? Like, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question.
Well, I think with McDonough's different, but with Guentzel, you get more longevity. I mean, he's 29 years old.
Right.
So
but he's not 26.
Yeah, but but Stamkos is what, 34, 35?
Right. No, listen, there's no, but what about Sergachev versus McDonough?
But your point of the argument, I feel like, was saying about the rebuild, retooling with Tampa, and they just got essentially a younger goal scorer.
And they got an older defenseman, and they traded off of a guy who was supposed to maybe be the heir apparent to Victor Hedman.
But now they just got Hedman for another 4 years. They just locked him in. Literally,
I understand that. Yeah. Well, they had to do that. Yeah. I mean, again, that with everything that happened yesterday. So let me ask the chat. Okay.
I think at this point in time, right now, like, while I don't agree with how it went down, because I think if Stamkos wants to stay, and I know it's a business, but they probably should have been in a place to make him happy, right? Like, Steven Stamkos.
Well, listen, they could have given him 4x8 instead of the 3x8, and he would have had I mean, if he gets a 4x8, it's the same thing as getting 8x4. It's more spread out, but you're still getting the same money. And then you can sail off into the sunset as a 40-year-old in Tampa Bay as their captain. So, I mean, I don't know if it's that simple, but I have to at least propose the question. So let's ask the chat. Let's ask our group that's here. Do you think that $16 million is better spent on Guentzel, okay, and McDonough, or Sergachev and Stamkos? I don't know the answer. Like, I think
I'm going with Guentzel and McDonough, to be honest.
So I like McDonough, but just think of everybody. Like, everybody ripped the Lightning when they brought McDonough back. I felt like I was on an island saying that I liked that move. And I seriously, people are like, he's old. They're living in the past. What are they doing? Sergachev is the future. Look, it's harder to find legitimate defensemen, top pair defensemen, than it is top line forwards. There's more top line forwards. So you just walked away from Sergachev. So I don't know. Like, I think it's a really, really important question to ask. And I'm somebody who always talks about building through your blue line, Johnny.
Yeah. I mean, you're also talking to a guy who grew up basically idolizing Ryan McDonough. So, like, I kind of have that bias there. But Guentzel, to me, is still automatic 30 goals a year.
Yeah.
And McDonough is, one of the best shutdown D still in the NHL.
I agree.
Like, Tampa right now, the moves they made, it doesn't jeopardize their future as much to me, like, that I thought it would. You know what I mean? Like, I thought, like, if they lost Steven Stamkos and Sergachev like they did the other day, well, I guess Stamkos was yesterday, but was Sergachev yesterday or 2 days ago? Because he was traded, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I would have thought, wow, Tampa's in trouble, but I just don't look at the Tampa Bay Lightning and ever think they're in trouble. At least right now with their roster, it's still relatively strong, and they have Vasilevsky in net. Like,
and Lucas in the chat says Geeky and Moser are good depth adds as well. I do agree. I like JJ Moser. I don't think many people know who he is because he's played for the Coyotes.
Yeah,
but I've done some games out there, and I felt like he he is a solid player. And then you have Geeky, who maybe they'll get a little bit more out of. So those are good points to make. And let me just address Tommy T in the chat here. Great question. I think McDonough, Chernak, and Hedman are the perfect veterans to teach a young core of defensemen turning into pros, help rebuild a decor. Listen, that is a very, very accurate statement, Tommy. But let me ask you a question. Who are they teaching? Nick Perbix, I mean, listen, he's an okay player, right? He's not this future piece for them. Like, Perbix was a draft pick. He's been serviceable, but they haven't had any winning playoff runs with Nick Perbix. Darren Radish, same thing. Nice piece. He developed in the minors for Syracuse, turned himself into a full-time NHL player. But like, is he really the future for that team? Like, I don't know. So I don't know. Like, I think that the question, and we'll bring Frank Seravalli in here and we'll get his opinion on this, because I think this is something that is going to continue to be talked about. Good morning, Frank. I'm honestly surprised that you're not just taking like a nice long day at the beach and turning off your phone, but I guess signings will still have to happen today.
And you got the hat memo.
Yeah, for the first time.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen you wear a hat forward.
I didn't feel like getting all of my gray hair in order today. So,
Frank, let me ask you the question that we've been debating here just to start the show. And honestly, I don't think either of us have taken a really strong opinion.
I said Guentzel and McDonough.
He said Guentzel, McDonough, but let's just say you're spending $16 million on Guentzel and McDonough, or you were spending 16 and a quarter on Stamkos and
Sergachev.
And Sergachev. Like, who are you better off spending that money on? I think it's a little bit of a coin flip.
It's a good question. Really good question. I'd probably lean toward what I already know. Right? I mean, what do we know now? McDonough is not quite what he used to be a number of years ago. And there is risk, of course, in Sergachev, because the first thing I thought of with the injury with the trade was that the Lightning must know something that we don't when it comes to the injury. So Stamkos or Guentzel, I mean, you're probably talking about a younger, slightly less threatening goal scorer.
But he's still a 30-plus goal scorer a year.
Yeah, Jake Guentzel over the last 6 years is 14th in the league in goals. Yeah, and he's the only guy on that list that hasn't played 400 games.
Yeah, so that's impressive.
It is. I mean, he's 27th in the league in points, 22nd in points per game. Like, I believe he's an elite player.
Yeah. And also people debated whether he'd thrive or not without Crosby when he went to Carolina, and he was over a point per game. Like, he was perfectly fine in Carolina. He wasn't the issue that they had in the playoffs. Like, I thought Guentzel actually was one of the better players against the Rangers too in that second round series.
Agreed. And look, did the Lightning actually improve? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But I think what is indisputable is that the Lightning did significant damage to their brand this week.
Yeah.
I think they did significant, not just to their brand. I think they did significant damage to their room, to their culture, to everything else. And not one player is bigger than any of that. But when you go out and bring in other players to replace your star player, your superstar player, who, again, it's not like Steven Stamkos dropped down to 22 goals last year and 50 points and was saying, sign me to an extension. Then we'd all say, you know what? Hey, this makes sense. Probably time to cut ties and move on. Mm-hmm. He had 40 goals last season and 80 plus points. This isn't someone that just fell off a cliff. And with his game, I don't envision him going anywhere.
Yeah. We've been talking about Tampa a lot here.
So let's change gears, because I've been thinking about this and it didn't get talked about enough yesterday. Okay. And I want to talk about it because I've been thinking about it in my own head.
So that's why you wanted to come on here today.
No. What exactly were the Ottawa Senators doing with Jacob Chychrun yesterday?
That was a bizarre trade.
That's one of the worst trades I've seen in the last 10 years.
And Frank, did you see Staios' comment where he said there was a lot of interest in Jacob Chychrun? I had to
Your return suggests that there was little to no interest.
I had to double take. I thought when I first read that, Staios said there was little to no interest. And then I reread it and I'm like, wait, there was a lot of interest and this is the best you could do on Jacob Chychrun? I mean, that was a bizarre trade. Was the market for him that bad? And if it was, why are you not just holding on to him until the deadline?
I do not understand this deal for the life of me. Chychrun is 26. Nick Jensen he turns 34 for the first game of the regular season. If the Caps were lucky, had Jensen played out this year and got to the deadline, and let's say they're not in a playoff position, they'd be lucky to get a second-round pick. He's already minutes per night. So let's say for a pure hypothetical that Jensen becomes a second. They basically traded a second and a third for Jacob Chychrun. Yes, they need to extend him. And that's not going to be cheap. Chychrun's going to go from 4.6 to probably somewhere in the mid sevens. But he was traded for a first and 2 seconds on March 1st, 2023. I don't understand what's happening here. Help me understand this. I just don't get it.
And look, don't you think you could have held someone ransom at the deadline as a rental for a first round pick to like a contender where at that point his salary is down to nothing? I mean, somebody would have done that and given up a first round pick, when we do our trade deadline.
Plus.
Show, like, crazy. I mean, this was a massive choke. I actually was kind of surprised that Brent Wallace wasn't like freaking out about it when we went to him on the East panel on the show yesterday. He strikes me as the kind of guy that has a big opinion about things. And I honestly felt like they kind of let the Ottawa Senators off the hook talking about it.
Everyone did. That's why I wanted to bring it up today. What was that? Of all the GMs that I circled back to last night, always to just say, hey, thanks, appreciate your help today, whatever else. People you're talking to, agents, players, whoever it is. That's the thing people kept coming back to, was like lost in the shuffle of today was, holy crap, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I have that in my note as we were going to get down to that division because
Vic's note on it was Ottawa sucks.
And what else? Like, what did they really do yesterday? I mean, people are like, "Oh, Ottawa improved yesterday."
I like Noah Gregor. I think that works.
Was the big move they made.
David Perron is apparently overjoyed to be in Ottawa, which is, I think, really important. And he got some term, which is great. I think he'll be a nice piece, but then we still have the Shane Pinto question to answer.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that doesn't.
So who had
like
the more disappointing day? Who had the more disappointing day yesterday in that division? The Ottawa Senators or the Buffalo Sabres?
Oh, I would say probably the Buffalo Sabres, actually.
Because they also buying out Skinner too and not getting much back. Like with that, Skinner to me is still a good player. Like he can still score goals. So I don't know
on
why
the bare minimum, Jeff Skinner's 25 goals.
Yeah, I don't know why they bought him out.
But just for pure candor, like I said 10 days ago, this buyout doesn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Vic throws in the chat that they just signed James Reimer. Okay.
They're back.
They're back.
So you've got UPL, Devin Levi, and James Reimer. Did you need James Reimer?
No, that means they probably think that Levi is going to be down in the American League next year for at least chunks of the season, which again, I don't think you rush goaltenders. I think that's how you ruin a goaltender. But I mean, look, you signed Zucker, Aube Kubel, and Lafferty. It's like, are those guys together going to get you 25?
They're all they're all decent bottom six pieces,
right? All together, you're not probably getting 25 goals from those three. Maybe you are combined. Maybe.
And yesterday instead, if you want to spin it in a different direction, the Edmonton Oilers signed Skinner, Henrique, Corey Perry, and the math, and Matthias Janmark and Connor Brown for basically $11 million total.
Yeah. Listen, the Edmonton Oilers did some work yesterday.
Yeah, they did.
Jeff
Jackson was cooking.
They made their forward group a lot better. They really did. I mean, there's no doubt that when you go to dailyfaceoff.com and you pull up those line charts, that front 12 now looks a lot different than it did. I mean, the ability now to sort of spread out a little bit and have different threats in different areas. I mean, Leon Draisaitl, again, you've reported that will get done in Edmonton, you believe, right? And he's got to look at that and go, all right, like that's a team now that all of a sudden, I mean, I think they might. I mean, do you think Edmonton is going to look to try to move on from one of those defensemen, maybe Ceci or Kulak or one of those guys? Or you think that D-core is sort of the run it back group? They brought Troy Stetcher back. I saw that.
Yeah, I think they'll examine it. I mean, look, Josh Brown is probably their 6-7. I was surprised that he got a 3-year deal. And in fact, I would say I don't think they needed to do that. I know they felt they needed to get the player. Yeah, 3 times 1.
Mm-hmm. But I saw a couple GMs actually yesterday, Frank, who commented, look, if I wanted this player, I had to go the extra year or 2 even. Well, hey, but I agree.
Let me tell you this. A lot of people have been all over the Anaheim Ducks because they were talking about getting a top 6 forward and top 4 defenseman.
Did nothing.
They were in on all the big fish. They offered more term and more money on all of them. Stamkos, Marchessault, all these players. They offered more than that, than what they signed for, and they were turned down.
Interesting. And they have to fill like $8.8 million, right? In cap
at least.
Yeah, I saw that. But
that's interesting because I mean, like, look at the difference where in Chicago they've got Bedard, and now all of a sudden, like, guys are like, okay, I'll go there. Like, I'm sure Bertuzzi had some other opportunities and some other options, but yeah, I think that thing is tuned up for you, Frank. I could hear that little pump right there. So I saw Vic hitting you on that in the chat. But look, let's talk about Chicago a little bit. I said that they were one of my favorite teams yesterday. I thought Kyle Davidson struck a perfect note, and I talked to him a little bit last night actually when he finally came up for air, and he felt like they didn't damage the future of their salary cap structure while starting to put some pieces in place. And it basically gives them an opportunity to really look at Teravainen, really look at Bertuzzi to see like how impactful these guys can be as they move into the next step of this rebuild. It's kind of a perfect situation.
Larry Brooks had this line in his story yesterday about Jacob Chychrun, and he said, the first rule for any GM in free agency is, quote, do no harm. And I thought that was such a great way of putting what I think the Blackhawks did. They were immediately getting heat from some people, the mouth breathers on Twitter, who said, oh, this is the weirdest rebuild ever. And it's like, no, you've got really good young pieces that weren't properly supported last year because Taylor Hall was hurt. Mm-hmm. All these guys were hurt. Corey Perry gets terminated. You take 3 players off that roster due to termination and injury up front, you're thin in a hurry what was already thin roster. So to me, there's not one single contract that they handed out that they're going to regret.
And they're all short term. They're all short
term. That's what I mean, because they are short term.
Yeah.
Even if you don't love what Bertuzzi or Teravainen is doing in the last year of your deal, which I think is a really good bet that you will, that's it. It's going to be over by the time your cap is really moving in a different direction. So I like everything that they did. I think they really improved and are going to compete. They may not be a playoff team. I bet they're going to be close.
Yeah,
I bet they're going to be in that 8. They're going to be anywhere from 7 to 11 in the conference next year.
I think with Brossoit, if he plays well, Johnny, like
that's a hot take.
I think that's a team that's going to knock on the door to a wild card next year. I don't
tell me who you think is good in the wild card mix. Do you think St. Louis is good?
I gotta look.
Do you think about all the other so Nashville significantly improved? Okay, they were our playoff team last year, and if you were thinking, okay, the Preds made it on the back of a heater last year, well, they are for sure in this year. Okay, There's probably not going to be a big fallout from the teams that are right at the top, like Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado. They're not going anywhere.
I still think Minnesota's better. I think Utah could even be better. I think
Utah will be. I think Utah is better for sure.
Minnesota. Just remember something about Minnesota. Minnesota's got like what, 15 million in debt, some crazy number. I don't know the exact.
It's their last year of 15 million.
Is cap friendly gone today? By the way, is it gone today or is it?
No,
still...
it's one more year.
Okay.
Wait, what?
Cap friendly. I'm saying
sorry. Cap friendly is gone on the 5th.
Okay, so it's still functioning today, but they've got a pretty hurtful number against them on the cap this year.
But they've had that against them for 3 to 4 years,
and it's hurt them. You look there, they just seem to come.
But they made the playoffs the first 2 years, so I disagree.
I still think, Frank, that Chicago finishes in last in the Central.
Last in the Central.
Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, Nashville, St. Louis, Utah, Winnipeg.
I think St. Louis. I think there'll be a better team than St. Louis this year. I don't really know what to make of Winnipeg. They're obviously a good regular season team. They have a new coach. We'll see. There's question marks.
They've got Hellebuck. Like
they do have.
Hellebuck. You could make a compelling argument, Johnny, for sure. Yeah. But I'm telling you, I don't think they're much different now than St. Louis, Minnesota, or Arizona.
No, to me, it's the blue line, though. Like, I don't think Chicago's D.
That's true. They do.
But what you're going to see, and not that this is insane, you're going to see a 25-point improvement. They're going to be in that 75 to 78
They won't
point
be
range.
a joke, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Last year, they were horrible.
But think about how big of a step that is to take, a 25 improvement
they're
year
in
over year.
the third year of a rebuild.
But we were just a minute ago, we were like, they're going to be knocking on the wild card spot.
He said 11th place. I mean, 11th place out of 15 is not, somewhere between 7 and 11. I mean, 11th there's only 16 teams. So you're talking about a bottom 5 team, but an improvement, not a lottery team. So, all right, look, we did that. Here's the next. You brought up Larry Brooks, Frank. Let's talk about the Rangers. Let's talk about their inactivity yesterday, the Riley Smith trade, and then the article that Larry Brooks just wrote about Trouba's wife.
Yeah. So hand up. I thought Teravainen was coming. I kind of teased it. I was wrong, and you guys both called me out.
We saw that. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm used to you being wrong, but let's get into it a little bit, Frank, because wait,
hold on. Can I tell the viewers what my favorite part of it was? He texts me, he goes, Rangers, Teravainen, and I go, no. And then he goes, really? With 2 question marks. And I go, no. Like, there were so many deals done way ahead of time. Like,
do you know how much guts it took me to text you also? I didn't want to bother you at all yesterday. And I was like, wait, I've heard this is done.
It was my favorite part of my favorite part is like knowing a bunch of deals that are done for 7 to 10 days. And seeing people speculate like, hey, this guy could go to these 5 teams, and like the place he's going is none of the teams that
he was the only player I heard that was linked to the Rangers yesterday. The only one.
All right, so let's talk.
I don't think that. I mean,
what can you tell us about?
You know more than me.
What can you tell us about this whole Jacob Trouba situation? Because look, I generally don't believe what I read. I know Larry Brooks has been around. He's got sources. I honestly think that guy has gone off the deep end. He can't tweet about the Capitals without calling Ovechkin Putin's guy. Like, to me, he's come unhinged and honestly embarrassing is the way I would describe him these days. He writes an article about Jacob Trouba's wife in the headline of the article yesterday, which again, like, I that stuff makes me cringe a little bit. Whatever it is, what it is, you're an athlete, your whole life is in the spotlight. But like, I see a lot of Ranger fans on Twitter, Johnny, being like, oh, who cares about his family situation? It doesn't matter. He has a no move clause or now it's a no trade clause, right? A modified no trade clause. Like, players get that and they can exercise it, whether you like it or not. Be mad at the general manager who gave him that in the contract. But Frank, my question to you is like, is there truth to this thing where he went to them and said, we want to trade you to Detroit? And he said, I'm not waiving for Detroit. And then he submitted his list. Detroit's on the list. Like, what is true?
Can I say one thing though, before you go, Frank?
Go ahead.
Sure.
I've never really seen in all my years of Twitter a player their name dragged through the mud like this, let alone the captain of an Original Six franchise. And I don't care how good or how bad that player might be. Frank, I'm just curious if you've seen anything like this before with one singular but a player of this magnitude, like this is insane to me.
Yeah, this happens all the time. I mean, look, Jonny, you're too young to know and remember the Eric Lindros stuff of the 90s. This is nothing. This is like polite. I'm serious.
I don't even know any of that.
It really is.
That was crazy.
So, what I would say is, first off, let me address the Larry Brooks thing that you said, because I thought part of it was unfair. I've known Larry a while. I don't think anything's changed. I think this is kind of always how Larry has been. So, and also, this is a common cop-out that people hear all the time, but the writers don't write the headline. If you actually read the piece, I thought it was incredibly fair.
Yeah.
In terms of how the situation was presented. It was presented professionally. This is a guy that cares about his wife. This is a guy who views his wife as an equal in terms of their occupational status within the household. Mm-hmm. And this is a guy who says, I've already done my thing. I signed a contract for these exact reasons. This is the timeline that I outlined. The timeline, unfortunately, has changed a little bit. And we also now have a child. I'm not interested in moving. And so really the most interesting part to me in the piece was sort of the hint that seemed to be that Trouba was, and again, I haven't followed up on this, so I don't know what is happening or isn't, but taking everything that was presented in that piece as face value, because he clearly has more information than anyone else. The most interesting part was that Trouba seemed to hint that if he had gotten traded somewhere, that he wasn't going. That's critically important information and intel. If you have a no move and you're supporting it, great. But when it shifts to a no trade clause and you hint to teams, hey, I'm not moving, I'm not going, well, that's a totally different situation. And you have that right as a player. You have that right as a player that's made a ton of money. Certain things are bigger than that. And it's okay. Like, it's okay for all of us. We want to talk about players as, you do this in air quotes, pieces of meat that get thrown around. And sometimes in some really tough situations, I have no problem at all with a player flexing his muscles saying, this ain't working for me and I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Colby and I usually stand on that side as well. Like,
listen, we talk about it with the young guys who whether it's Rutger or even Cutter, we said we didn't like how he handled it, but we had no issue with what he was looking to do. But I want to just take another step just quickly here, Colby. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but now you look at this situation, and Frank, I just want to get your clarification on this as well. Yesterday, the Rangers' lack of moves, Trouba's situation, is that a big reason why? And to add a second part of that, do players now look at how a Gaudreau was treated and how a Trouba was treated and get turned off by coming to the Rangers? Because we don't know how, quote unquote, how they were treated.
Yeah,
Drury came out yesterday and said, we sat down and look, Chris Drury was a captain in the NHL. Mm-hmm. There's no way he didn't sit down and have a conversation with Jacob Trouba. It might have been, look, I would like to trade you. Would you be willing to do this? But Chris Drury isn't going to sit down and scream and yell in Jacob Trouba's face and text him and tell him he's packed your shit. You know what I mean? Like, so like, that's the part where, like, don't believe everything you read and hear that there's all this anger and animosity and this and that. Like, these are professionals.
I agree.
Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, listen, I don't think that it was a screaming match, but I'm also just saying, and you know, I'm probably wrong in thinking this way, but the way that it's gone down in the media, I mean, again, like, it is insane when you look up Jacob Trouba's name on Twitter, what you're reading.
It was also, to be fair, it was clearly presented inaccurately. It was presented as if this deal was done. This is
Mhm.
the exact percentage that was retained. This is happening. The decision, the literal last line in a story a few days ago was the decision has been made.
Mhm.
And that's on people reading it. That's on people reporting it. And that's on media literacy. That's on all those things. Like
Mhm.
the decision has been made. Well, if the decision was made, then he'd be gone. The decision can't be made without one person.
Yeah.
So that's on people and how they consume it. That's not on the Rangers. That's not on Jacob Chychrun. That's not on anyone else.
So we think come opening night, Jacob Chychrun will be wearing a Ranger jersey.
Yes.
So do I.
And how do you? I just feel bad for the guy now at that point.
It's over. You have to park it.
Yeah.
So you know they wanted to move on. It's a business. It's a cap-related machination. Last time I checked, I didn't hear anyone feeling so bad for Torrey Krug this season. It was never talked about again.
Yeah. They tried to trade him. He straight up said, no, I'm not going to Philly.
So, but Torrey Krug managed fine last season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Torrey Krug can do it and there's little to no fanfare, Jacob Chychrun can do it. There's worse situations in life. Trust me.
Yeah.
What did you think of the trade, Johnny? Like as a Ranger fan, were you happy? And did you, because I saw you tweeted, I can live with this.
Yeah.
I mean, a second round pick for Riley Smith, $5 million. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't think that was a very, very good trade. I don't know how much that really improves your team.
I mean, it was getting rid of Barclay Goodrow's contract for Riley Smith, essentially. That's kind of
here's the problem. Is, well, you did outline the cap part of it.
Yeah.
But for one, they took on Riley Smith at full boat. Like if you gave up a second and you got them to retain half, I'd say, okay, that's a different story.
$2.5 million for Riley Smith is amazing. But
well, it's 3.75. They retained 25%.
25%. Yep. Sorry, you're right. I said full boat. But 1 year ago at this exact period in time,
yeah,
Riley Smith was traded for a third round pick because the Golden Knights had to move the entire contract.
Mm-hmm.
So to go second and fifth and only get 25% retained, it's probably not great on the value chart. That said, I'm a believer in Riley Smith and his game, though, and I think he's got lots left.
And also, I think the Rangers have a lot in their farm system right now and a lot of young guys coming up that, like, the draft picks 2 or 3 years from now, to me, shouldn't be that big of a concern.
Yeah. Anytime you're moving a second, it should always be a concern. Like, that's a real asset.
But the window to win is right now. And if you're going to go,
how much percentage points did Riley Smith increase the Rangers' chances to win?
Yeah, listen, that's the other part of it. I don't think Riley Smith is the guy who gets you over the hump, but you know, the Rangers had to address a need at the right wing, and they did it.
Here's the thing. There's a lot of teams yesterday that were disappointed. I mentioned the Ducks. The Rangers are probably one of those teams that heading into the offseason period had way more grand plans than what ended up being executed.
Mm-hmm.
I'll include the Vancouver Canucks. I bet they were disappointed. They didn't get Guentzel. They lost Lindholm. They lost Zadorov. They lost all these guys. There's a number of teams that were really look at the Florida Panthers. Look at the Carolina Hurricanes. Teams that lost real pieces. But let me take you back to what I said earlier. Do no harm. The New York Rangers did no harm. Right? Like Riley Smith, it's fine. Signing a guy to a 7-year monster contract, that's harm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Frank, that actually leads me into a good transition here. I want to talk about one of our sponsors, OutWest, and we'll talk about who the loser of the day, in our opinion, was yesterday. So, ladies and gentlemen, now that we're settled into summer, let's dive a bit deeper into OutWest. The founders, born and raised in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, saw high-end brands flooding the market. The problem, those brands often aim to connect with those chasing the exclusivity of prep culture, while OutWest has created with a new customer in mind. We make our clothes for those who feel that a premium brand hasn't connected with them yet. When you buy OutWest, you're not just getting some of the finest threads in the game at a great price point. You're embracing what our company stands for. What started as a few boxes in a basement is growing more and more every day, hoping to one day become a company with national recognition in the market. Everything we have accomplished thus far is all thanks to you, our customers, and we can't wait to keep you making great clothes, or we can't Can't wait to keep making great clothes for you all. So if you haven't checked us out yet, head over to www.outwestgolf.com to get 15% off of your first order with our code Cuppa, CUPPA, and discover why every game needs an outlaw. So let me just ask you guys, the two of you, if you're picking one loser yesterday out of every team, who is that loser? Who came up the most empty-handed? And I know you've kind of hinted at the Ducks, but I feel like we haven't talked a lot about the LA Kings.
That was harm.
Yeah. And I saw a funny
Edmondson
video.
4 times 3.8. When I got that deal yesterday and I tweeted it out, I almost did a double take. Is this real? Is this the right number? This is a guy
Sorry. Keep going.
No, this is a guy that I thought was on his last legs and is getting $15 million.
I saw a really funny video yesterday, and I hate not crediting the account that I saw it from, but it was a video of them, basically the video of Rob Blake's banner going up to the rafters. It was just played in rewind where they were like kind of taking it down. It was pretty fucking funny.
How about Detroit yesterday? I was disappointed in Steve Yzerman. Like I just don't. When are they finally going to take the next step? You know, like I am somebody who thinks that the league is better off when the Detroit Red Wings are good, right? I think most people can agree with that. We're talking about an original six, a beautiful uniform, so much history. Steve Yzerman, you know, the face of their franchise running the team. And, you know, he seems to be, I don't know, Frank, too patient. Sure, they get Kane back on a 1-year deal, which I think is a win. You know, we had all heard the reports that he was looking for some stability, but again, you know, his home is Chicago. It's close to Detroit. Like his significant other, she's from Chicago. That stuff all makes sense to me. But you know, they lose Gostisbehere, Perron. It looks like Sprong's gonna walk. They bring in a couple of backup. You know, they bring in Talbot and Campbell. But like, how are they going to improve to get into the playoffs? We keep hearing every year it's Detroit and Ottawa, like they're finally going to do it, right?
And
Jonny
Buffalo too. Buffalo's in that
every
too.
year. You know, I mean, listen, I could put Buffalo in this conversation too, but like, when is the quote unquote Yzer plan going to actually take shape? Because I'm waiting, Frank, and I just see inactivity, and I would be starting to get really impatient if I was a Detroit Red Wings fan.
All fair questions to ask. The big goal for the Red Wings was we need to improve our back end. They salary dumped Jake Wallman. I mean, look, they were obviously trying to get something done for Trouba. So it doesn't work out. What's plan B? What's your check down option? That defense core is just, you need a new contract for Mo Seider. Simon Edvinsson, I think is going to be unbelievable. Like, I think he's ready to step right in now.
Big guy, right, Frank? He's like that 6'6". Is he 6'5", 6'6" player?
Yeah, he is 6'4".
Okay, so he's a big man. I thought so.
Yeah, he's going to be really good. He's gotten the proper development and seasoning, and like, I'm really looking forward to seeing Simon Edvinsson play.
When was their last playoff year? 2015.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and this defense core isn't anywhere close to competing.
Yeah. Right. And Shane Gostisbehere, he signed for what, 3 and change per year like yesterday? Like,
I think you mean to tell me, right? Like,
you mean to tell me for a guy who can run your top power play, like $3 million a year, $3.5 million a year isn't worth it? Like, I know he's not.
How did he get squeezed so much? He had a 56-point season, 3rd consecutive year of double-digit goals. I understand that the term was probably important to him after a 1-year deal, but how does he have a 56-point year and take a $1 million pay cut on AAV? Help me understand that.
Seriously, somebody had texted me and asked me if I thought maybe he'd go back to the Panthers. And I was like, there's no way the Panthers can afford $4 or $5 million a year, which is what I thought he would get. And you're right. He probably prioritized that 3rd year, Frank, over a higher AAV. He probably could have got a little bit more money. He's made good money in his career. Like, so, you know, he's obviously not made.
This will bring his career earnings to $38 million.
So, and he's a smart guy. So I'm sure.
But still, 56 points and double-digit goals. How do you take $1 million haircut?
Well, let me tell you what I noticed a little yesterday, and it's evident by some of the guys who haven't signed. The smaller offensive defensemen are seemingly not.
They're getting crushed.
Yeah, I mean,
so okay. I've had this conversation with multiple agents. Okay, since yesterday. How is it possible that guys like Josh Brown and Labushkin and Forbort was a healthy for how many games last year?
$1.5 million for Derek Forbort.
Didn't he play in the AHL last year?
Yeah, he's borderline an American League defenseman.
So yet how is it possible that Tyson Barrie, who has 500 points in 800 games, Kevin Shattenkirk, tremendous career, go through the list. These guys. Tony DeAngelo, another great example.
Number one power play guy.
How is it possible that all these guys can't get $1 million deals? We've jumped the shark. We're now back into like 2011 Peter Chiarelli heavy hockey days, where it's only big and only toughness that wins. I swear, if you have a beard and you have tats, you get years and term on your deal.
I mean, honestly,
and you get signed. You're big, you have tats and a beard. You like that guy's tough. We need him.
When you reported that $1.5 million to Derek Forbort, I was like, somebody gave him more than league minimum. And like, I get giving him a one-way. He's been in the league kind of for a couple of years now, but I was shocked.
Dude, I felt stupid because I didn't know all the details, but I knew the Canucks were signing Forbort. And I was like, it might be a two-way. It might be whatever. And I was like, Canucks are bringing in I just said Canucks are bringing in Forbort. That's all I typed. Mm-hmm. And when I saw the terms after the fact, I was like, and you mean to tell me none of these other guys can get contracts?
Yeah. Listen, I thought it was kind of ridiculous. Let's just address
Johnny wants to say something.
Well,
go ahead.
I just wanted to step in and bring up a team that I can't believe we haven't mentioned yet. And I saw Kelly McCrimmon's press conference yesterday where he was kind of disregarding the fans a little bit. His quote was, fans think they know our players. I know our players better, but we haven't even mentioned the Vegas Golden Knights as one of the losers of yesterday.
So, one of the most arrogant GMs in the league. That's so weird that he would say that. I can't believe that would be possible.
So last night, Frank, about like 9 p.m., I hit our group chat. And like I've been messing, Vic is he's a Leafs fan. I mean, through and through. Probably more of a Leafs fan than Jonny is a Rangers fan, because I think Johnny's a closeted Islanders fan. But anyways, I texted our group chat last night and I said, the more Frank talks about this and the more I now look at what happened in free agency yesterday, the more I actually think that Mitch Marner is going to end up in Vegas. Like, I think he either is a Toronto Maple Leaf next year or a Vegas Golden Knight, I think those are the only two options at this point. But the more I look at it, the more I hear you report and talk about it, the more I'm convinced that is actually going to happen.
So, yeah, I think one team you can officially scratch off the list is the Nashville Predators. Okay?
We haven't even really talked about them much yet on this show either today.
Right, which, again, we did mention they did win free agency.
Yeah, like everybody, it's old news at this point, literally.
Yeah. So when it comes to the Golden Knights, though, the fact that they didn't get Marchessault done, that's tough. Said goodbye to Chandler Stevenson at that number makes sense.
Yeah. He got overpaid.
Well, he's a really good player, so I don't know that overpaid, but the term is a lot.
The whole
6.25 is a reasonable number for Stevenson, but at 7 years is not. And by the way, I mentioned it on the show yesterday. I was originally told that deal was 6 years, $7 million, so they flip-flopped it and added term and decreased the AAV.
Interesting.
The Golden Knights, to close out yesterday's show, I said they never retreat, they never back down. It's their motto. It's on their locker room wall. It's somewhere. They don't just have cap space and then not use it. That's all I'll say.
It's we'll keep an eye on that tweet. That's going to come from you at some point, whether it's in a week, whether it's in 2 months. That will be a tweet that comes from your tweet, from your handle.
This is the Mitch Marner situation is a slow burn.
Yeah. But also, Colby, Vegas's blue line is no different. And that's something that we talk about, right? Building through the blue line. Like there's still a solid back end with good goaltending. It's not like
they've got a great back end. I mean, I'm looking, and they could part ways with Shea Theodore and not really miss him that much, which is a crazy
insane
because I think
that's an insane comment.
I agree.
He's a stud,
Frank.
but you guys think what? Sorry,
I think that's a crazy comment.
Okay, but you look at their back end. Look at who they have. I mean, they've got a bunch of really, really good defensemen back there. There's no
but Shea Theodore is like he's an elite defenseman.
Nah, that's not necessarily true. He's not an elite defenseman.
You don't think so?
He's in that net. I mean, like Pietrangelo is an elite defenseman. I think Shea Theodore is the next class under. I wouldn't put him in the elite top of the category. No. And I love Shea Theodore, but I wouldn't put him there. Offensively, very gifted. But I wouldn't say he's an elite defenseman.
He needs a new deal.
I'm trying to think of a comparable, like on a different team who Shea Theodore would be.
Let me two more teams in the East that I want to talk to you guys about. And one of them is because Ariel has been asking us in the chat, and Ariel comes in and is in our show all the time. So I want to address her. We're talking about, and by the way, I'm not slandering Shea Theodore. I just said I don't think he's an elite guy. I think he's an all-star caliber, but not an elite guy. It's like Matt Barzell, all-star, not elite. All right, that was for you, Ariel. By the way,
you're just about to compliment Ariel, and you go at her.
So she asked, "What did we think of the draft that Lou had? One, and B, what did we think of what they did in free agency? I mean, let's
steal the first round. Friend of the show, with Cole Yzerman.
They did take Cole Yzerman 20th. He's an elite goal scorer at the level he's played at. Will he continue to be an elite goal scorer? I think he will. I'm probably a little biased, but what did you guys think of that pick? Did that surprise you that Lou took a guy who people were kind of looking at as like look, he fell. He could have gone 5 or he could have gone 30th. We really didn't know.
I wasn't surprised if I can start. I mean, the Islanders, you talk about needing more elite goal scorers, and you got the most elite goal scorer in the first round. Like that's one thing Colby and we talk about all the time, right? You need they had Casey Cizikas playing on their first line with Matt Barzell. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and no discredit to Casey Cizikas, but he has no business being on the first line. So if you go out and get a guy who is known for putting the puck in the net, what they thought Oliver Wahlstrom would turn into and hasn't, that's your chance to go get him. And I think Cole Yzerman, not only is he, the player that Colby thinks will score 40 goals one day, which you and I both have to place a bet that Lafreniere gets 100 before Cole Yzerman gets 40. I want to place that bet on this show. And if it doesn't happen for either, it's a wash.
I'm not making that bet about a guy who has never stepped foot in college hockey.
You're so confident.
That's ridiculous.
All right, whatever. Besides the point. And Vic goes, there goes Isles fan Jonny with the passion. No, but I didn't know much about Cole Yzerman, the person, before we sat down and spoke to him. And we had a great 30, 45-minute chat with him. Like, I'm a big fan of Cole Yzerman now. I'll be rooting for him at BU. I'll be quietly rooting for him when he puts on an Island jersey. But I think the way that they got him at 20, to me, it's like, the Rangers almost getting Gabe Perreault last year at 23. I think Yzerman will be one of the top players in college hockey this year, like Perreault was last year, and then people will start saying it 2 months in December. Oh my God, the Islanders got the steal of the draft when Yzerman has 15 goals in the first semester of college.
Okay, thanks for the Yzerman segment.
That was the question.
But the New York Islanders didn't improve.
Yeah, what did they
do? They're the
yesterday?
Same exact team doing the same exact thing for the 5th year in a row.
Duclair and Mike Riley, are they really moving the needle for the
Mike Riley is a 7 borderline healthy scratch.
Yeah.
And when you look at Duclair, he had a tremendous fit in Tampa, which, like, again, he was exactly what that team needed. How does he not end up coming back? He takes the bag on Long Island, which I guess I get. You're trying to get some term. He gets $14 million. He's pretty happy, I'm sure. But the Islanders are the same thing on repeat. It's like, how many times can you hear that song this summer? I need a little help. Like, every time I turn around, it's all I hear. That's what the Islanders are. They were good to start, and then on the 27th time you hear it, it's not really that good anymore.
Frank, we got a comment in the chat, though, from Carousel Vertigo. New York Islanders equal do no harm.
No, the harm was doing nothing. They did harm.
Yeah.
But
Duclair
makes them
on their
a little
hands
bit better.
for too many years now, Johnny.
What's up?
How did they not address any of their other issues? They are still in cap hell for one more year. So they're going to do it all again to just ride out the year? They were a team that snuck in the playoffs and got their lunch handed to them, which shows that they're not 1/16 of the way there.
Yeah.
Which means you're nowhere. What's the path forward for that team to be way better this year?
Yeah.
What I mean, I'm curious. Like I want to see Patrick Waugh make magic happen. How do they get there?
Well, first they got to get off some of these players that are just too slow to play at the pace of the NHL. I mean, it's just a reality when you look at their roster. I mean, you're just
why I had JG Pajot on my trade board and buyout list.
Yeah.
The fact that you go through another year and you're going to be in the same spot with Pajot a year from now, like you got to rip the Band-Aid off at some point. And I don't mean to single him out. It's just he's part of a group of players that it's not good.
And then on the flip side, staying local, unless Colby, you had one more thought on the Islanders?
Go ahead.
The New Jersey Devils, they addressed every single hole that they had, right? Goaltending, blue line. Their forwards are still very strong. I mean,
they got heavier up front.
Yeah.
Stefan Nason's a good signing for them.
And I think
that was a good thing.
What'd you say, Frank?
The Devils, they were cooking.
What happened?
Look, I get that.
I thought he was going there, and then last second, right?
Stamkos. Him and Stamkos got on the phone with each other, I heard.
Yeah, I don't know that the Devils, they were on the list, but I don't know that they were ever seriously considered. Look, Nason is a great signing. I really like the Paul Cotter deal with Vegas.
Yeah.
I hate giving up on Alex Holtz that quickly, but I think he's going to be an important piece for them. Holtz just ran out of real estate, but to me, the two biggest changes, we've talked about goaltending forever. Mm-hmm. It had been one position that in 4+ years Tom Fitzgerald hadn't solved. Now you've got two guys in Allen and Markstrom that 82 nights a year, you're feeling pretty good about who you're putting in the net. So that's one part of it. But then now looking at their back end, the issue that they had was last year they made too many bets on young players to step in and fill roles. Mm-hmm. And then Dougie Hamilton got hurt and missed 3/4 of the season, and that compounded everything. Now, Hamilton's healthy. Nemitz and Luke Hughes are going to take a bigger step. Mm-hmm. Seamus Casey, I think, can be really good.
He's so good, man.
That's four, and then you supplant those two guys with Brett Pesce and Brendan Dillon, not to mention Kovacevic or Kovacevic, however you say it, from Montreal. Yeah.
Big guy. Another big guy.
Played against him at Merrimack.
If that guy's your 7, or if Seamus Casey is your 7, or if Seamus Casey's in the AHL, you're winning.
Yeah, I like that back end. And the other thing, too, that is
someone's going to need to explain to me, though, the Curtis McDermott signing.
The Matt Rempe effect.
That's
he's just going to be in the lineup when they play the Rangers.
That actually, just like we can have a lot of fun. That's the worst contract so far this entire offseason.
Well, look, he'll end up on waivers now that they brought in Dillon and they brought in.
But why not wait? Why did you feel the need to go nuts on McDermott then?
What did they give him, Frank?
He got 3 years times 1.15. So it's a buriable contract, and I get it. But $3.45 million for a guy who averaged under 5 minutes of ice time is absolutely insane. Yeah. It's $3.45 million that you took and flushed down the toilet.
That seemed like a little bit of a.
And by the way, I say that, and I am like, I love for Curtis McDermott that he got that money. Like,
good for him.
He is one of the most well-liked and respected guys. Like, everyone loves him.
Yeah.
And I get it because he does all the things that you don't want to do. That said, that's rich.
Those guys, the McDermott brothers, there's a brother who played for the Bruins and played in the American League, Lane, who I played with. Those guys are nails. Like I'm telling you, Lane would eat foil before hockey games. I'd be looking at him in his stall. He'd have a full sweat. He would be doing like jump ropes and like, shadow boxing. And I would be watching him get ready to go out for warmups. It would stress me out how much he was like.
Yeah, because you're like, this guy wants it way more than I do. That's like, what you were probably thinking.
This guy might run me in warmups and we're teammates. Like that's how those McDermott guys are. Like they're nails.
Look, I love that, but the fact is he struggles that much that you need to play him less than 5 minutes a night.
Frank, there's a couple comments in the chat that I want to address in regards to this. Pascal Rachan said that's the Reeves deal from last year, LOL, which is kind of comparable. And then Tango ESQ said Wenberg is the worst contract by far. Sorry, Frank. Wenberg got $5 million a year.
That was bizarre. I mean, but again, that's the same thing as Kyle Davidson giving $5 million to Corey Perry. And I know Corey.
But
Perry,
the difference is they didn't give up
Corey Perry and Wenberg.
What'd they give Wenberg? 2 years?
2 years, $5 million per.
Yeah, he got 2 years. Like, look, it's slightly out of whack. It's not the craziest. It's definitely not the craziest deal handed out. Like Wenberg as
floor.
So look, you only need to rewind back to 2017. He got 6 times 4.9. Then that was already at $5 million. We are now 8 years later, and he got $5 million times 2. Yes, that contract ended up being bought out, but my point is he's still probably somewhere in the 40-point range plus. It's not and it's only 2 years. It's not the worst deal.
JC had a funny comment, Colby, if you saw that in the chat.
I didn't, but what about Florida, Frank? And there's a question in particular that I saw in the chat, and I'm sorry that I can't remember who dropped it in, but it's a good point. It was something I put in my notes. What's going to happen with Spencer Knight in Florida? Is that a guy that they're potentially shopping or taking phone calls on? Because it seems like maybe a fresh start for Spencer Knight might be in the best interest of the team. And, you're paying what? Is he 4.6 against the cap for a backup goalie? If he's in the AHL, then he counts for what, like 3.4 of the 4.6? That's a lot of money for a team that's cap strapped.
It's an imperfect situation, that's for sure. But you can go way back to the Dale Talon era and still try and help me understand why you would draft Spencer Knight 13th overall in 2019 and then 10 days later sign Sergei Bobrovsky to a 7-year deal. Like, still don't understand how or why that happened. Right now, I think they're comfortable if they go into the season with Spencer Knight as the backup to Bob. They've got to re-assimilate him at the NHL level. Hopefully he's worked and done the things that he needs off the ice to put himself in a position to succeed. And I think he has, and I think that part has been trending in the right direction. That said, it's a tough spot for Florida right now because they view him as a talented goalie that, you don't hand out that type of deal to a guy that still hasn't broken through yet, unless you are a believer in his talent and pedigree. And now, because he spent another year in the AHL at that rate, teams are looking at it saying, well, we want him, but we're not going to give you a ton for him. There's not a huge, value proposition, especially when there's other goalies available, like an Askarov, that have the same or similar pedigree, and some are younger that don't have some of the same issues surrounding them. That I don't know why it would make sense for Florida right now to make a move and trade while his value is lowest, unless he's gone to them and said, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. I need a fresh start. I don't think that's the case. Mm-hmm. I was there at the Stanley Cup final. At every game as they're singing the national anthem, they scream Knight,
which is the weirdest thing
for Spencer Knight.
Yeah.
So and he was on the ice in his equipment, hoisting the cup. Like, he seemed to be in good spirits. And so I don't think there's anything imminent, but that said, it makes sense to me. And I talked to at least 2 teams in the last week that mentioned Spencer Knight unprompted and said that they'd like to try and get him. I just don't know why it would make sense for Florida right now.
Well, and they did sign Drieger yesterday. He was like I think he signed later in the day, right? He's a goalie. He's got history there. I think they gave him a one-way deal as well. So, that I saw that and I said, that's an easy deal to put on waivers and put him in Charlotte or wherever their AHL team is now. But everyone needs goaltending depth. So it's not crazy to see that happen. But I just was curious if maybe they were shopping him around and that was potentially why.
Mm-hmm. I have one more team that I want to bring up. I know we're kind of getting close to our time here, but we kind of hinted on them a little bit with Chychrun. The Washington Capitals, I feel like all year Colby and I spent talking about them. Just they're going for Ovi's record and that's it. And they're going to rebuild. But
I know you kind of shit on them a lot harder than I did last year, by the way.
But you agree with me in that sentiment.
I mean, listen,
I think
they weren't trying to win
off seasons.
Say that again.
I think they've had a great off season.
I think they've done the best blend.
But here's something I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if you guys know either guy personally, but we talked about PLD on here, but I haven't heard the best things about Logan Thompson as a teammate. So having PLD and Logan Thompson in the same room too, and they kind of hinted that Lindgren was going to be their guy. Now those two are battling. I'm curious how that room is going to be next season with the personalities and if there's going to be any head bashing. But as far as
I don't know the guys well enough to know, and I'm not a psychologist, so I wouldn't even begin to try and think about what that looks like. But I mean, so let's break it down. Like I think there's good and bad. Like if PL Dubois becomes the player that a lot of people think he could be, then it's going to work out really well. And if he ends up being a dog, well, then you've got a worse version of Anthony Mantha that they tried forever to get rid of. So
there you go.
But no, I was going to say Chychrun, significant upgrade. Chychrun's one of his best friends going back to Florida, Brandon Duhaime. You sign him. Speed, significant upgrade. Like there's certain teams in the NHL that really get their bottom six right, and especially their fourth line. The Boston Bruins routinely kill it with fourth line players. The Washington Capitals are killing it with fourth line players.
Yeah. Taylor Raddysh too, good bottom piece. They signed yesterday for $1 million. I watched him in Chicago. Like he can.
Okay, but really look at Nick Dowd. I talked last year about how in demand he was at the trade deadline because of his contract. They have the secret recipe for bottom six players. They've got it. They figured it out. I like their goaltending moving forward. I like that they've got two guys that are hungry that are counting for a total of $1.8 million.
Two southpaws also.
And I think that team is better now than they were to end last season. And I think they're probably a pretty decent bet to make the playoffs again.
Yeah.
Well, they made the playoffs this year and
and you're back in. I mean, you've got Matt Roy now. Like you have a good back end.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Matt Roy. I think he was the best. He was the best pure defender available.
No,
in free agency.
I like their back end, and you've got back end. You get saves. You're in a metropolitan division where the Flyers are going to be bad. The Islanders are not going to be a good team. So like all of a sudden you're looking at the Capitals and you really do see a path to the playoffs with him. Frank, look, we could probably keep going here and maybe Johnny and I will for a couple of minutes. We'll let you go. Let me just ask you one final thing and get your opinion on something that on the lighter side of things. And since it's potentially our last live episode of the summer, did you happen to see Johnny's tweet of his dating profile photo with him and Henrik Lundqvist? Did that strike your
feed? That did pop up on my feed.
I mean, can you help the guy out, Frank? Like, what are you doing putting a picture of like the most beautiful guy in the entire world on your dating profile? It's just going to make you look bad.
Can I go first?
Maybe it's for attention.
Can I go first?
Go ahead. Give us
the whole point of me
behind
being on a dating app is to attract women. What attracts women more than Henrik Lundqvist? Nothing.
Yeah, but they're all going to.
That's the point. You're not trying to get them to bone Henrik Lundqvist. You're trying to get them to bone.
Engage.
They
stop and they engage.
And they're going to friend zone you. And that's why I always say you're in the friend zone with everybody.
But if I'm holding up a picture of me and a fucking fish or me playing pickleball, what's that going to do? Like everyone does that. Who else has a picture of Henrik Lundqvist on their dating profile?
I'm not as down on it as you, Colby.
I think it's a good play. And also, it's funny, which I didn't post.
I don't. The reason I'm most down on it is just because it's like Rangers fan Jonny flexing. That's the part that I think is the weirdest.
Yeah.
But the idea that you have Henrik Lundqvist on your feed, that's not that weird.
But also, it's funny, Frank. So I didn't post this on social media. 20 minutes after that, or 30 minutes after that, I had another match, and the girl said, "Is your dad single?" In parentheses, I saw this on Twitter 10 minutes ago. Pretty funny.
That's one you should swipe left on.
Yeah, I thought it was a little creepy too.
All right, Frank, look, go enjoy the first day of fresh air for you. I'm sure you'll still be working today because there's still good players out there. Johnny's favorite player in the NHL, Jack Roslovic, didn't sign anywhere yesterday. I wonder why. Johnny defended that guy all playoffs.
He was pretty good.
He was not good in the playoffs.
He was pretty good.
No, he wasn't. He was awful in the playoffs.
No, to close out the regular season, he was good.
Okay, but yeah, he was absolutely awful in the playoffs, which is why he's going to get a 1-year, $1 million deal somewhere. Cam Atkinson, I'd heard he had some interest yesterday, but he's probably taking his time. Some of the guys we met. So
James Van Riemsdyk.
Everybody keep an eye on Frank's Twitter. Get those notifications set for his Twitter because there will be news pouring out. Hopefully you've got some nice weather down the shore today, Frank, and we'll be bugging you again at some point this summer to come on one of our summer episodes. All right.
And to rebrand my Hinge.
This is it.
All right. Well, look, Frank, thanks for your time today, man. We appreciate it. I know it's been busy for you.
See you guys.
Frank. You didn't do the let me ask you a fun one. You should have started with that.
Did you hear Tyler Yaremchuk say that on the free agency special yesterday?
That was great. I texted him.
I was just smirking. Oh man. All right.
I was cracking up.
There's still so many teams I really want to talk about. We're not going to get to them all. I feel bad. We didn't really go to the West all that much. Look,
I disagree. I think we covered a good amount of the West.
Let's just praise Barry Trotz really quickly. Yeah. I love what he did yesterday. Nashville, one of the best fan bases in the NHL, one of the loudest places to play. I hope Nashville can get them. Think of how much fun a Stanley Cup in Nashville would be.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the rager of all of them. I mean, at the draft, we were at the draft, obviously, as you all know. Everybody was like, the draft should be in Nashville every single year. Every GM, scout, coach that I saw, they all said the draft should be in Nashville every single year. So I love what he did, man. I really, really love what he did. I think that it was a statement. He never struck me as the guy that would do something like that. But he's like, listen, I want to win. I want to bring a winner here now. And I think it's smart. This lifespan of these guys' jobs is so short. Go for it, and try to go out and hit a home run and make some big time decisions that are going to help you. But two teams that I have left, Johnny, that I want to address, as many as if there's other you want to go to. But let me start with the Boston Bruins. Yep. Okay. Did the Boston Bruins get better yesterday? Yes. But are they going to regret the term on Lindholm and Zadorov? I think Zadorov got way too much money, way too much. I think that this is way too much recency bias with him. And look, I'm not convinced that Elias Lindholm is a number one center. And listen, did they get better? Yes. Did they have cap space? Yes. But I don't know. Does this make the Bruins a Stanley Cup contender? I don't know. And we saw what Frank reported. Conversations with Swayman are not moving along, right? It's never been easy when they're doing deals with Swayman. And I'm just wondering about those two contracts. How quick are they going to regret those contracts? I don't know the answer to that, but I want to ask the question.
So Zadorov got what, $5 million? How many years?
I can look it up here.
I know Lindholm got 7.7 for I think 7 years.
Yeah, he got 7, and I think did Zadorov get? I don't know. Vic, can you look it up for us? What Zadorov got? I don't want to start getting into it. 6 years.
6 years.
6 years.
So and Lindholm got 7.7 for I think 7 years. So these are two guys who both 29 years old, probably both, teetering around their prime right now, right? Like you're kind of in that prime age of 29. And the Boston Bruins, like the back end, who's getting through Zadorov and McAvoy if they're a D pair? That is to me one of they become, if the chemistry is there, one of the best top line D pairs in the entire NHL. I mean,
you think he'll play with McAvoy?
I would hope so. I mean,
so you think
they just got rid of Grzelcyk?
But Grzelcyk was never a true number one top pair guy. I mean, I think that was a mismatch. I don't know. Zadorov, is he really a top pair guy? Like, I don't know.
Daily Faceoff has Zadorov now slotted in as the third pair with Andrew Peeke, and they have Mason Lohrei as the top pair with Charlie.
Which listen, that's a little bit. Look, Hampus Lindholm had a bad year last year, right?
Yeah. But
if Lohrei could play on the top pair, you hit a home run. He cost you $900,000. It's great, but I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, 6 times 5 for a guy who I believe is a bottom pair defenseman. I think that's a lot of money. He's bigger. He's mean. All of those things are true, but I don't know. I think these are contracts that maybe Don Sweeney won't have to deal with in a couple of years. Maybe he will. But they got better, but at what cost?
I still just think McAvoy and Zadorov, if they do play together, will be incredibly dangerous. And I think Zadorov mentioned something about McAvoy yesterday when he was interviewed about going to Boston, I believe on NHL Network or TSN or one of those networks. But, listen, the Bruins are a team. They're always competitive no matter what. I mean, going into last year and the year before even, we were like, 2 years ago, they were missing Marchand and I think McAvoy to start the year, and they go run away with the President's Trophy.
Yeah.
Colby, you know better than anyone. Like, when
Can I tell you why they've been good for so long, Johnny?
Why?
They've had Vezina caliber goaltending for over a decade, and that covers a lot up. And I'm not saying they haven't had good players. Look, Charlie McAvoy drafted, David Pastrnak drafted, Brad Marchand drafted.
DeBrusk.
These are all players, right? What'd you say?
DeBrusk until yesterday.
But I'm just saying, they've hit on some major draft picks. They've missed, like everyone, but they've had Vezina, Tim Thomas, Tuukka Rask. Who's the guy that they just traded?
Ullmark,
Vezina, Swayman, like had a Conn Smythe level playoff until they got knocked out. They have goaltending every year, and that will cover a lot up for you as an organization, and it's helped them win for a very, very long time. So, we'll see. I don't think Zadorov is a top pair guy, but we'll see. Like, we'll see how he looks when he's playing against other teams' top lines. And are you really getting 20 plus minutes out of a guy at that side? Like, I don't know. I really don't know. The other one I wanted to ask you about, Johnny, that I thought were some overpays on term, maybe money, and that's Seattle. We talked about the Chandler Stevenson contract. $6 million a year for him is a good number, but 7 years. Is he truly ready to be a number one center? He's always kind of had other guys to sort of take the number one matchup for him. So he's been able to contribute offensive. Listen, he's a great 200-foot player. But
he won't be the number one center, though. I still think Matty Beniers will be number one.
Okay, so but maybe, you're talking about those two. Like, is Matty Beniers that much better right now than Chandler Stevenson?
No, but I think they'll want him to grow into that and take on that responsibility.
I'm just saying, it's not like you're talking about the difference between Jack Eichel and Chandler Stevenson. Like that, it's a major difference. Beniers might end up, but he's still young. He's still dealing with the early ups and downs of a
sophomore slump last year.
But the one that I think I have more issue with is the Montour deal. I think $7 million a year to make him like your top pair guy. Like, is he a top pair guy, Montour? Like, I don't think he is. So you have him and Vince Dunn, who are, I wouldn't say they're similar. I think Montour plays with a little more bite. And I think Montour, is a little bit more of a meaner player. But listen, he's all over the place. I mean, in Florida, they wanted you to take chances and they lived with it when you got beat. And then you had Bobrovsky to cover up for you. They don't have that in Seattle. Like, I think that contract, and albeit within 3 years, the cap's going to be at $100+ million. So $7 million is going to be like what $9 million is today, right? Or so like $7 million in 2 or 3 years is like a $5 million guy today, right?
Yeah.
So maybe at that point we like the deal more, but I don't know.
Just going off Daily Faceoff too in the lineup, they have Adam Larson paired with Vince Dunn, and then Dumoulin with Montour as a second pair.
Okay,
so
I'll tell you right now, Seattle hasn't really ever loved Vince Dunn. They never really have. The first year they had Giordano on the first power play, and it was a major point of contention between Dave Haxtell and management. And I know that for a fact because I remember being there doing a game, and I remember talking to people in their management, and they were talking about how Haxtell was not necessarily using the players that the general managers brought in, and Vince Dunn was the name I kept hearing. Why do we have this guy if he's not on the first power play? Right. So, how does that work out now between Montour and Vince Dunn? Montour, didn't have a great playoff when things got really heavy. So I don't know, like good for him for getting paid. But I think that deal is one that might end up being a little problematic.
But also like, I don't want to insult Seattle. Are free agents dying to go there?
No. Why would you?
So locking these guys up long term is probably a safe play for the organization.
It's a fair point. I mean, especially like I'm surprised. Like I thought Stevenson would have a lot of good options. I thought there would be a number of teams. To see him end up in Seattle is a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah.
Coming from a no tax situation, going to Washington State, which is, I don't know. Are they a no tax situation in Washington State? I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. But let me ask you this too. I'm looking at the Pacific Division right now, and I could see Seattle finishing 3rd or 4th in that division easily. You look at the teams. It's Anaheim, Calgary, Edmonton will be back. LA is a question mark. San Jose will not be very good. Then Seattle, Vancouver, and Vegas. Like Vancouver and Edmonton probably will be 1 and 2,
and I think Vegas too. I mean, come on. I think
yes, of course.
You still have a lot of good players on Vegas, right?
But I'm not saying I don't think it's automatic.
I think that's 1, 2, 3 without a doubt. I don't think there's any question. It's 1, 2, 3, and then sure you put Seattle at 4. Depending on LA, LA is a huge wild card. We have no idea, but. I still don't think that puts them into a playoffs. Like, I still don't think Seattle's a playoff team. Do you?
I think they got better than they were last year, though.
Yeah, sure. Because they added a couple of players.
Yeah.
Who did they lose? They lost Drieger, Devin Shore, Connor Carrick. So it's not like they lost a whole lot.
And
so sure,
it was a down year for them this year. 2 years ago, they were in a game 7 in the second round against Dallas.
Yeah, but I think that was a little lightning in a bottle. I don't think that's truly who they were. I really don't. I thought they're more who they were in year 1 than they were in year 2. Yeah. And I thought year 3 looked more like year 1. And I think year 4 is going to look more like years 1 and years 3, not years 2. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't. And who knows what we're going to get from Dan Bialsma. That guy hasn't been in the NHL in a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Jeremiah says 6.5% state tax in Washington. So he answered that question, and Seattle's a very expensive place to live. That's probably all I really wanted to go through from a team standpoint. Johnny, if there's anybody you want to talk about, we certainly, we can. Look, we're going to have more shows. We're going to do 1 show a week. So as other things start to happen, we can address it. Let me just throw one other thing out there, because I do think there's somewhat of a misconception about this whole tax situation. And so,
well, I just one more team.
Let me just
quickly.
Yeah. What?
No. One more team quickly. I was just going to give credit to was Utah.
Jeremiah, I see 6.5% sales tax, to be clear. Sorry, no state income tax. So that's okay. So go ahead, Johnny. You want to talk about Utah? I was
just going to say, if we're talking about teams that just like were aggressive and tried to make some moves and make some noise, like credit to Utah. They're a team with a lot of unknowns, obviously, just because it's a new franchise. But, they went out and got Stenlund, John Marino. They traded for Sergachev, Ian Cole. Credit to Utah.
Cole, Marino, and Sergachev. I mean, those are massive upgrades on your blue line. Those are massive upgrades on your blue line. They clearly had a directive from their head coach From their new owner that said, we need to go get a couple of players. They were aggressive. They'll probably continue to be aggressive. They have cap space. They're going to be
They re-signed Jersey too, I believe, right?
They did. They re-signed Jersey. They gave him. So now their back end is in a pretty good spot. So I have no problem with what they did. I actually liked it. I thought they were like Chicago. They didn't quite get the same as Chicago because I don't think you're going to necessarily draw the names in free agency. And they gave Stenlin a deal who just won a Stanley Cup. But they were aggressive in the trades. Sergachev was a trade. Marino was a trade. Ian Cole was a free agent signing. And they really didn't lose a lot. So,
and I feel bad that we didn't address Catherine's Columbus Blue Jackets, but she just said in the chat that she's excited about the Jackets this season. It's okay not to mention it. They have to show some people.
They just had an announcement in the last hour, by the way. They announced that Steve Mears was going to be taken over as their play-by-play guy.
I saw that.
For Jeff Reimer. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. But look, Sean Monahan's a good center. They didn't lose a whole lot. I think Johnny Gaudreau will be happy to have Sean Monahan back. I'd love to see Johnny Gaudreau get back to his old form. They stood heavy on Caden Lindstrom in the draft. I mean, I can confirm the fact that that the reports about Chicago trying to get to number 4, that was true. Chicago did try to get to 4. They wanted Demidov. The Flyers also tried to get to number 4. They wanted Demidov, but Don Waddell sat pretty heavily on that, and they wanted Caden Lindstrom, and they got him. So, look, we talk about that we want to see Columbus be good, right? We do. We constantly talk about the fact that we'd like to see the Columbus Blue Jackets fan base have something to celebrate because we think you guys are completely underrated. So, we'll see what they look like. And, they haven't even hired a coach yet. That's supposedly going to happen in the next week. So that's probably a topic we'll discuss next week on our show, Johnny, when we do it is who's that hire? Listen, they said yesterday Joel Quinnville is not on their list.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about
that's pretty big news that Quinnville and Stan Bowman have been reinstated. The timing of it I thought was interesting. Had they done this a month ago, you're probably talking about Joel Quinnville as a head coach somewhere.
Yeah, but do you think the time of it was because people would be so focused on all the free agency signings that it would just kind of go under the radar a little bit?
No, nothing goes under the radar anymore because of social media. I just think that the pressure...
I still think that's a bigger story if it's July 2nd than July 1st.
Sure. No doubt. But I think the pressure was really mounting to Gary Bettman to give these guys give them a sentencing. Put a number on their suspension, right? Are they suspended forever? Are they banned forever? Is it 5 years? Is it 10? Whatever the number is, I think that's the pressure that was mounting, within the NHL and within outer people, lawyers, whoever. Because look, when you punish someone, you have in the way it works is you've got to put a number on the punishment, unless you're banning them forever, and then that's the number forever, right? Do you have any opinions on it? Do you want to have an opinion? Would you rather me kind of have the opinion and talk about this?
Well, no, listen, I've read everything. I've listened to interviews. I listened to the Cam and Strick podcast with Joel Quinnville on it. I mean, Quinnville said that he had talked to Kyle Beach. I heard that Kyle Beach actually reached out to him after that interview. And, I'm just going on what I've heard.
Yeah, John, you're not going to get in trouble. You're going to be okay.
These things to me, when I feel all the information, I don't want to give my opinion. There's still things that I'm learning about the situation. So I you call me all these names sometimes, but I'm pretty well thought out with what is actually serious and how I form my opinion on it. This whole Jacob Chychrun thing, I didn't give an opinion on it until I had all the facts on that, because I don't want to jump the gun and say things that are going to turn out to be untrue and whatever the next day. With this situation, I still think we're learning about it. And now that he's reinstated, we're going to hear more facts, I feel, come out about the Quinnville situation. But everything I had heard was that he and Kyle Beach had a conversation, and Kyle Beach had said, I'm not going to hold you back from coaching in the NHL again. And the interview that I listened to on the Cam and Strick podcast, there were a lot of things that Joel Quinnville did not know, and to punish him for life, when he didn't have all the facts about the situation, to me seems a little bit cruel.
I listen, I think the situation in itself was a terrible situation, but I'll just tell you this, and I'm going to come at it from the angle that I worked in that organization and I was around a lot of people that lost their jobs. Actually, it all went down when I was working there. And so Stan was one of my bosses, and Al McIsaac and the head of PR, and there was a ton of other people, right? And they all lost their jobs. And then there were a lot of people that were lower down that didn't lose jobs, that were just, normal, employees and not decision makers. And, the one thing I want to say, and I want to make really clear, because listen, I have had a close personal relationship with Stan Bowman for a long time. And I'm happy he's getting an opportunity to come back to the NHL. And here's what I'm going to tell you. John McDonough, the guy who nobody talks about anymore, ran the Blackhawks as a dictator. Okay, a full-on dictator. And I'm talking about walking into people's offices and making them retie the knot on their tie because it wasn't a good enough knot for him. I'm talking suits in 90-degree heat in the summer, people having to be at their desks at a certain, like, it was a dictatorship. He would make low-level employees chauffeur him around on the weekends. The low-level PR employee was treated as his driver. He'd say, I'm going to dinner with my family on a Saturday night. I need you to come pick me up and drive my family. I mean, the guy was a dictator. And we've all been in a situation, right, where we may have a boss that we were a little scared of, whether it was a GM, a president, whether you work at a marketing company and the CFO is and you feel stuck, right? And I know we all like to pretend like we would have been the hero and we would have done it and we would have run to HR and we would have said something. But listen, when you have a family to feed, sometimes you feel like I have a boss, and if my boss tells me to shut up or my boss tells me I'm dealing with it, you might be a little bit handcuffed. And I'm not condoning. I think the biggest miss here is the way that this was handled. Obviously, there were enough people that could have done something and it wasn't done. I don't condone.
And he's come out and said that too.
But what I'm saying is these people had bosses. Joel Quinnville has a lot of bosses. He's got a GM, an assistant GM, a president, an owner, right? All these people above him that should have done and handled. Same with Stan Bowman. Stan Bowman was the GM. He answered to John McDonough and ownership, right? John McDonough was a dictator, right? And I just think that all we want to do is we want to crucify Joel Quinnville and Stan Bowman when both of these guys have done everything that they can do to, get training and talk to Kyle and do all these things that to realize where they went wrong. So I think that we don't put enough into the fact that John McDonough, we never bring him up. We don't know. Did he go and do all this training? Did he go and better himself and learn what was wrong about this whole? We have no idea. So honestly, you can hate me for saying it, but Stan Bowman and Joel Quinnville should be reinstated. They should have another opportunity. I hope to see both of them back working soon. Whether you don't like it and you think that's unpopular, I don't really care. That's just my opinion on the matter. And look, Frank reported that Stan Bowman is one of the top candidates for the GM position in Edmonton. So, listen, we have people that kill people that get out of prison, okay, in this country. Right? We have people breaking the law every single day that are let right out. Okay. So you do something wrong, you serve a penalty, you are hopefully rehabilitated, and then you come back. All right. And so when I look at it for that perspective, I'm happy that Joel Quinnville and Stan Bowman are able to seek employment in the NHL.
Yeah. And, I know a lot of people that are close to Joel Quinnville, and I've again, the situation that happened, I would never wish that upon anybody, but Joel Quinnville, go listen to the Cam and Strick podcast with him. Listen to it, and you might think differently. You might get more of an understanding on the situation. And I've had some friends who played for him that loved playing for him and love him as a guy. And that's really all I'm going to say.
It's fine.
It's
Listen,
a tough thing. It's a tough thing to talk about. And
I think we talked about it. We hit it on the head. I did see a comment about the Carolina Hurricanes. We talked about the Hurricanes, didn't we? I think we briefly hit on the Hurricanes. Maybe we didn't. I don't know. I mean, we talked about why, we talked about them signing Shane Gostisbehere. They did.
We
go
definitely
out,
talked about the Hurricanes.
We did go. They did go out and get Sean Walker. Like they improved their blue line, which always seems to be a strength. They already signed Chatfield to that deal, but I do think that. And I see your comment here, Zach. I mean, Stan wasn't exactly a good GM either. Listen, we're not talking about any of that. You can have your opinion one way or the other on what you think of him as a GM. We're just talking about the ability to seek employment within the NHL. And that's where we're at with this whole thing. But yeah, with Carolina, they still have a lot of cap space. And, I wonder if Necas actually ends up now signing and staying in Carolina because, Don Waddell left, right? He was the GM that seemed like he didn't really want to get into the contract situation with him or give him the money. Maybe Tulski's willing to pay him. I don't know. It is interesting to me that he hasn't been traded yet. Like him and Rutger McGroarty are still the two guys that are hanging out there that I'm surprised haven't been traded.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I don't really have any thoughts on that.
Let's get to Betway and take a look at Stanley Cup winner odds for next season. I know it's a little early for that. With Betway, you can still get the free $200 bet. Scan the QR code on your screen, create a new account. Offer available only outside of Ontario. Please be responsible. Must be 19 years of age or older. And you bet as much or as little as you want. You'll get that free $200 bet if it doesn't hit. Look, after yesterday, I like the Edmonton Oilers. Like, I think the Florida Panthers have taken a little bit of a step back. I think the Edmonton Oilers have taken a step forward. Colorado seems really high to me. They've got major cap issues. I think the Devils should be where they are. Little surprised though, Johnny. Your New York Rangers.
Yeah,
I don't see them anywhere on this board.
What the fuck is up with that?
I think a lot of people think the New Jersey Devils really took a step ahead of the New York Rangers yesterday.
But how are the Canucks and the Hurricanes ahead of the
I agree. I don't think either of those two teams are should be where they are. So make those futures bets. Use the free $200 bet to make a future bet. I mean, there's good value there, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, if you lose, you'll have to wait a year to get reimbursed on that if it doesn't work. But it is good value and it is a free bet. So. Johnny, let's talk our plans real quick here for the rest of the summer. We're going to do one episode a week. We're going to release the episode at 9 a.m. on Wednesday mornings. It might be live. It might not. It's really just going to depend on our schedule, right?
I think it's not going to be live. I mean, if there's like updating news to kind of cover, we'll probably hop on and do a live show. But as the summer gets on,
there's not going to be a whole lot to talk about. So, here's what I would say. If you like our show, make sure you put us on your Apple download for Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any and all of those, because that's going to be a place where you're going to get our show, right? The audio version of our show.
Yeah.
Vic, will we be uploading them to YouTube as well? Can you upload something that you tape to YouTube? Yes, we will. So
there won't be a chat. We'll miss the chat.
So there won't be a chat, but it'll be uploaded 9 a.m. on Wednesday mornings. That's the plan. So there's still going to be mornings. If there's crazy news going, we'll do it live. If not, we might pre-tape it because we're going to really lean into heavy guests.
Yeah.
So make sure you have your notifications set for Wednesday mornings on Daily Face-Off YouTube. Same thing with the Apple. Like I have it set where it just automatically downloads for me on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts for different shows that I like.
It's called subscribing.
Sorry. Thank you. So I thank you for that. I appreciate it. I was definitely looking for that word and couldn't find it.
I have this notification set.
So wait, subscribing. Exactly. Subscribing. Right. So, keep an eye on Johnny's Twitter. He'll do any updates we need. If there's any changes, keep an eye on the DFO. If we need to change it one week, but the plan is every Wednesday for the rest of summer till we get to October, then we'll go back to 4 days a week. Next year in the playoffs, we're going to be 5 days a week. That's one of the big adjustments for us. But we are all set for next season. We're excited about it. we couldn't have really done this season without you guys. To be honest, they would not have renewed our show for another year if we didn't have the audience to support it.
Yeah. And that's the biggest bummer actually about the summer is that we won't really have the live chat. So we're going to miss talking to all you every day.
Well, listen, we'll let's make an effort every once in a while to do a live show.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Let's we'll vocalize that on Twitter when we're going to be live.
You could tweet at us. We'll answer your questions on the show. But essentially what we're trying to do is get a lot of guests every week. Like we're going to try to get Nick Cousins on, and sometimes that 9 a.m. slot is a little bit tough for people, especially in the summer because they're doing their summer workouts. So we're going to have to pre-record interviews and then post them on Wednesday morning. And that's what we want to do. We want to have the best kind of quality of interviews we can get over the summer. And it's tough to find guys in the morning. So, that's a big part of why we're doing it this way.
How about the poll? 80% of our 303 votes said Stamkos and Sergachev were better off than Guentzel McDonough. So 80% of the 300 votes. So we'll see how that pans out. I mean, people seem to be in agreement, though, that's the better off. So if you like this episode, do us a favor, give us a like. You guys have been really, really great with that stuff. If you're on your way out right now, throw a like on the episode. Make sure you're subscribed to the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. Again, as things come up, there might be random stuff. We might film random stuff and put it on that YouTube page if something crazy happens. So you'll want to be involved in that kind of stuff. I'm just looking at the comments to see if anything keeps popping in here. Otherwise, look, we'll see you guys next Wednesday. Again, won't be live, but you'll get to hear some Jonny bad takes and probably me yelling at Jonny. And maybe
there will definitely be some July 4th stories for sure.
What do you got going for July 4th?
Well, I'm actually after the show, I'm driving up to my summer camp. They have me reffing their roller hockey tournament tomorrow. Which will be fun. And then I'm heading out east to the Hamptons. I rented a house with some buddies of mine. So going to be doing some Hampton stuff, which I always love. You heading down to the shore?
Yeah, we'll get out to the beach. We'll get some time spent. So
gonna play some spike ball with Frank on the beach?
Maybe. So we'll see. We're definitely close to each other in the summer. We'll do some meals with our families and spend some good time together. So
almost I think that's a 2-hour show today. We're holding Vic hostage. I think that's
all we got for you guys today. We wanted to make sure we got through everything and we wanted to tell you guys again how much we appreciate all of you guys in the chat. Honestly, this was all Jonny. I'll give him all the credit in the world. He told me how important this function would be to the success of our show. And Jonny, for once, you were right. You were 100% right. Not even something I can question. You knocked it out of the park with that, Jonny. So we'll finish season 1's live episodes with me just complimenting you and telling you how right you are. So enjoy your summer. What'd you say?
I hope my mom's listening to this one.
I hope she's listening too. Karen did a great job with you, pal. She did a great job with you. So thanks. Have fun in the Hamptons. Don't do anything stupid. Remember, people are always on their camera phones. Yeah. Hopefully, the Surf Lodge will be friendly to you, and you won't get friend zoned by everyone in the Hamptons, and maybe who knows? Maybe
so it started as a compliment and has to finish.
Maybe the start of next season, you'll have a significant other. Maybe you'll have news for us. I don't know. We're done with June, so that was your chance. June.
But we love you guys. Thank you so much. Big thank you to Vic. Big thank you to Frank for joining us every week as well. And we'll talk to you next week. Everyone, please, please, please have a safe July 4th weekend. And we'll talk to you soon. Love you guys.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.